I stood silently on the old bridge, its weathered wooden beams creaking gently beneath my feet. Below me, the river surged violently, foaming white against jagged rocks, as if nature herself mirrored my own turbulent emotions. The darkened sky hovered overhead, heavy clouds promising a storm. It was as though the entire world had conspired tonight to bear witness to this moment. Directly across from me, trembling and pale, stood Emily, my ex-wife, the woman I once loved more deeply than life itself. Her eyes, usually proud and confident, now radiated fear. Her voice shook with desperation, barely audible over the rushing waters. "Mark, please, please, you don't have to do this," she pleaded, stretching a hand toward me in a gesture that seemed both sincere and absurd. "Let's talk. I'll do anything you want." I felt a bitter smile creep slowly onto my lips. After everything she'd taken from me, after the devastation she'd left behind, the idea that we could simply talk was laughably naive. She wanted to erase all her betrayals with words, mere empty words. But I knew better. Words had lost their power the moment she walked out the door 2 years ago. "You wanted freedom, Emily," I said calmly, my voice barely betraying the storm within me. "Tonight, you'll finally have it, complete and absolute." "No, no," she cried, shaking her head violently, the wind catching her hair and whipping it across her face. "Please, Mark, I'm begging you." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. I had dreamed of this night countless times, envisioned every detail, anticipated every word she'd speak. Yet now, as the moment arrived, I felt no satisfaction, only a cold emptiness that surprised even me. I stepped closer, savoring the sheer panic in her eyes. She stumbled backward, grasping desperately at the railing behind her, knuckles turning white. For an instant, I remembered the gentle touch of those same hands, the warmth they once offered me. But that warmth was long extinguished, replaced by the ruthless coldness of her ambition. How had it come to this? Once, Emily and I were inseparable, two young souls drawn together by passion and dreams. Our early years were blissful, a vibrant montage of laughter, whispered secrets, and shared adventures. Life seemed limitless, and nothing could stand in our way. But the seeds of destruction had been planted early, lying dormant until Emily's restless spirit awakened them. Her desires grew stronger year by year, gradually overshadowing our marriage. She yearned for more than the life we'd built, something greater than what I could provide. Her ambitions became relentless, intoxicating her with dreams of independence, fame, and excitement, freedom in every sense. Eventually, the reality we'd created together became her prison, and my love, her chains. Our peaceful nights and quiet mornings turned into arguments filled with bitter accusations. The warmth of our home evaporated, leaving behind only echoes of resentment. I fought for her at first, begged her to stay, to reconsider the consequences. But Emily's mind was made up. The divorce papers arrived swiftly, signed with her firm, decisive signature. Within weeks, our union dissolved into nothingness, leaving me shattered, humiliated, and hollow. In the months afterward, I drifted aimlessly through life, invisible to the world that had once valued me. Meanwhile, Emily soared. Her career blossomed, her beauty captivated thousands, and her lifestyle, shared proudly across social media, appeared flawless. She became an idol, a paragon of modern womanhood, free and fearless. Yet as I watched from the shadows, a new resolve grew within me, fueled by a dark, insatiable desire for justice, or perhaps vengeance. If freedom was what she wanted, I'd give it to her, stripping away every illusion she'd built, brick by painful brick, until nothing remained but the harsh truth of her choices. My revenge wasn't impulsive. I had spent countless nights meticulously planning every detail. Patience became my closest ally, secrecy my shield. Emily never suspected a thing, too consumed with her newfound glory to notice the subtle unraveling of the world around her. And now, 2 years later, fate had finally delivered her to me. Here on this isolated bridge, under the watchful gaze of dark clouds and an indifferent moon, justice would finally be served. Emily's voice snapped me back to the present, piercing through my memories like a blade. Tears streamed down her cheeks, staining her perfect face. "Mark, listen, please," she begged again, voice trembling. It doesn't have to end this way. We can fix this. Fix this. I echoed softly, stepping even closer, the gap between us now dangerously narrow. You left nothing to fix. You chose your path. Now live with it. As lightning flashed dramatically overhead, illuminating her frightened expression, my heart hardened. She stumbled again, her back pressed firmly against the railing, trapped between my judgment and the river below. I leaned forward, my words barely a whisper above the storm. Freedom has consequences, Emily. Tonight, you finally pay the price. Her eyes widened, sensing my intentions too late. Before she could scream, before she could beg once more, I reached out and made my move. As Emily disappeared from my sight, a sudden rush surged through my veins, not triumph, but a strange, unsettling clarity. I stood silently, listening as the river below continued its endless, indifferent flow. The echo of my actions slowly faded into the night, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by distant rumbles of thunder. I felt the first cold drops of rain strike my face, a gentle reminder from the heavens above that the line I'd just crossed could never be erased. Turning away from the railing, I began to retrace my steps toward the car parked in the shadows beyond the bridge. My heart pounded steadily in my chest, each beat a reminder of the decisions that led me here. Memories flooded my mind with a painful vividness, images from a past that now seemed impossibly distant, yet strangely alive. I thought back to our first meeting, how Emily had walked into that small cafe years ago, her laughter ringing clear like music as she ordered her favorite latte. It felt like destiny had woven our paths together. I had fallen for her instantly, captured by her beauty, charm, and unquenchable thirst for life. Our love story began effortlessly, each day brighter than the last. Emily had a way of lighting up any room she entered, captivating everyone she encountered. Our friends envied the spark we shared, the seemingly flawless connection that bound us together. Yet beneath the surface, hidden from even our closest friends, cracks began to form, subtle at first, but steadily widening as time went on. Emily dreamed big, larger than life itself. She longed for more than the quiet comfort of our modest existence. Where I saw a home, she saw a cage. Where I saw love, she increasingly saw limitation. Her ambitions drove her relentlessly towards something elusive, a version of happiness that always lay just beyond her reach. Gradually, my presence became not a source of comfort, but an obstacle, a barrier to the freedom she craved desperately. Our relationship began to crumble beneath the weight of her growing dissatisfaction. Conversations turned bitter, arguments more frequent, each disagreement cutting deeper into the fabric of our marriage. I tried desperately to hold on to her, to show her that together we could have everything she wanted. But the more tightly I grasped, the quicker she slipped through my fingers. Emily saw my love as a restraint, my loyalty as weakness. When she finally declared her desire for divorce, it felt like the ground had shattered beneath my feet. My world collapsed overnight. Suddenly, I was alone, haunted by memories and shadows of the life we'd once shared. Emily, however, embraced freedom with open arms, quickly transforming herself into the woman she had always longed to become. Her new life glittered brilliantly, visible to all through endless streams of social media. Her dazzling successes, glamorous friendships, and newfound fame broadcast daily to an admiring audience. Meanwhile, I vanished into obscurity, becoming a ghost even to myself. Days blurred into nights, each empty moment a painful reminder of all I'd lost. Loneliness consumed me. Bitterness seeped into every thought, until finally, only one emotion remained strong enough to anchor me to reality: the relentless desire for vengeance. The plan grew slowly, carefully nurtured from pain into something more deliberate and powerful. I found strength in secrecy, quietly rebuilding myself in the shadows of her glowing success. I watched her every move, documenting each triumph, each joyful moment, as fuel for the fire inside me. Patience became my weapon, subtlety my strength. As I prepared for the night when Emily would finally understand the cost of the freedom she had so carelessly pursued. Now, standing alone above the raging river, I realized just how far I'd traveled from the man I'd once been. The gentle husband who had dreamed of nothing more than building a life filled with love and simplicity. That man had died long ago, destroyed piece by Emily's betrayal. In his place stood someone colder, more ruthless, determined to exact justice for all he had lost. Yet, as I stared down into the darkness below, I felt a sudden, disorienting wave of doubt. Had I truly become so different from her? Was this vengeance justified, or had my actions tonight merely made me an echo of her selfishness and cruelty? I quickly pushed the thought away. It was too late for doubts now. My path was already set. Tonight was only the beginning. One step in a larger plan designed meticulously over countless sleepless nights. Emily had taken from me everything I cherished. Now, she would know exactly how it felt to lose everything. I finally turned my back on the river, pulling up the collar of my jacket against the intensifying rain. The storm had arrived, mirroring the turmoil within me. Yet despite the chaos, my heart beat steadily. I felt no guilt, no fear, only the cold determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. As I began walking away, leaving behind the scene of my revenge, one thought consumed my mind, powerful and unyielding. Tonight had been only the beginning. Emily had wanted complete freedom. Tonight, she'd begun to discover the true cost of that freedom. But her journey into darkness had only just begun, and I intended to make sure she experienced every painful step along the way. As weeks turned into months, the divide between Emily's glittering new existence and my quiet, invisible life grew wider and deeper. Yet, beneath the apparent stillness of my days, a storm brewed patiently within, carefully concealed behind an outward facade of indifference. My silence was strategic. It was my greatest strength and my strongest weapon. While Emily believed herself untouchable, celebrated, and adored by thousands of strangers, I waited patiently in the shadows, watching her carefully constructed image grow brighter, more fragile, more vulnerable to collapse. Emily was everywhere, on billboards, magazine covers, television screens, and podcasts. Her beauty and charisma enchanted people, but behind every perfect image, I saw the cracks she desperately tried to hide. Her fans worshipped her elegance, wealth, and freedom, oblivious to the hollowness behind her glamorous facade. The woman they idolized wasn't real. Emily had abandoned herself long ago, trading authenticity for fame, chasing superficial admiration instead of true fulfillment. And soon, I would reveal her facade to the entire world. My plan took shape quietly, piece by meticulous piece, each step bringing me closer to the justice I'd craved since the day she left. I began by infiltrating her life from the inside, subtly enough that she never suspected my presence. I created anonymous social media profiles, effortlessly blending into her vast crowd of admirers. From there, I gently fed whispers of doubt into her perfect narrative, small, almost imperceptible cracks in her flawless image, sowing seeds of suspicion that slowly took root. First came the subtle disruptions, the misreported details in media articles, rumors of secret scandals whispered quietly through online forums, unnoticed at first but spreading like wildfire among her followers. Doubts soon multiplied, each carefully planted rumor undermining Emily's carefully managed reputation. Yet she noticed nothing at first, confident that minor setbacks were inevitable, believing herself invincible amidst the chaos. She dismissed the early whispers of discontent, arrogant in her belief that nothing could tarnish her gleaming success. Soon, however, the cracks deepened. Emily's anxiety became evident behind her forced smiles and hollow laughter. Her posts grew frantic, desperate, filled with strained assurances that everything was fine, each declaration only amplifying suspicion rather than calming it. She began to falter publicly, losing followers by the hundreds, then thousands, as the once adoring public began to see glimpses of the flawed woman hiding behind her flawless persona. I watched it all unfold with calm satisfaction, savoring every moment as her perfect world began to crumble. Yet beneath my satisfaction was something deeper, an ache of emptiness, an unsettling awareness that even victory wouldn't fully erase the scars she'd left upon my soul. Still, I pressed on, determined to see the downfall through. It was too late for doubts or regrets. She had brought this fate upon herself, and I was merely delivering the justice she deserved. One rainy evening, sitting alone in my dimly lit apartment, my computer screen flashed with a notification. An anonymous message arrived, brief and intriguing. "I know something about Emily you'll want to hear." My heart quickened as I read the words. Curiosity quickly replaced caution, and without hesitation, I responded, asking for more details. Moments later, another message appeared, cryptic but enough to stir something deep within me. It read simply, "Meet me tomorrow. This will change everything." That night, sleep eluded me entirely. My mind raced endlessly, contemplating what this revelation might be. Could there be something even darker hidden in Emily's past, secrets she'd managed to conceal, even from me? The possibility excited and terrified me in equal measure. Whatever lay ahead, I knew it could alter my plans entirely, pushing my revenge further, or perhaps forcing me to confront truths even I wasn't prepared to face. The following morning, under heavy skies filled with drifting gray clouds, I arrived at a quiet cafe near the city's outskirts, a place chosen for its privacy and anonymity. As I entered, I scanned the empty tables, feeling tension grip my chest. Moments later, a woman emerged from the corner shadows, slender, nervous, yet determined. I recognized her instantly, a ghost from our past. "Sophie," I whispered incredulously, feeling my heartbeat quicken. She nodded solemnly, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Mark. It's been a long time." Sophie had been Emily's closest childhood friend, once trusted and cherished, yet abruptly cut off after our divorce. Her sudden reappearance unsettled me deeply, but curiosity compelled me forward. She motioned for me to sit, and we faced each other cautiously across a small wooden table. "What is this about?" I asked quietly, my voice betraying none of the turmoil within. Sophie's eyes were grave, filled with an intensity that unnerved me. She hesitated for only a moment before speaking, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something you don't know, Mark. Something Emily kept hidden from everyone. Something she hoped nobody would ever find out." The air between us thickened, filled with anticipation and dread. I leaned forward slightly, urging her to continue. "What is it?" I prompted, my pulse pounding in my ears. She took a deep breath before delivering her revelation. A truth so shocking, so unexpected, it sent the world spinning beneath my feet. It was in that instant I realized my careful plans, my carefully constructed vengeance, had been incomplete all along. Emily had hidden far more from me than I'd ever imagined. And now, everything was about to change forever. For a moment, Sophie hesitated, her eyes locked onto mine as though searching deeply for strength or forgiveness before continuing. The silence stretched painfully between us, and when she finally spoke, her voice trembled under the weight of what she had kept hidden for so long. "Emily had a child, Mark. Your child. A son." The words struck me with the force of a physical blow, stunning me into speechlessness. My breath froze in my lungs, heart hammering painfully against my ribs as her revelation reverberated through every fiber of my being. I stared at Sophie in shock, certain I'd misunderstood, certain that this couldn't possibly be real. Yet her face, serious and full of quiet pain, told me everything. This was no lie. This was the truth Emily had hidden from me, from the world, from everyone she knew. I don't understand. I finally managed, my voice unsteady and weak. "We never had a child. Emily and I." "You did, Mark," Sophie interrupted gently, leaning forward, her expression softening slightly in sympathy. "Emily kept the pregnancy a secret. She never told you because she knew a child would bind her forever to the life she was desperate to escape. She chose freedom over family, over you. The day your son was born, she gave him away quietly, anonymously, without ever telling anyone. I was the only person she trusted enough to confide in." Her words sliced through me, sharp and merciless, reopening wounds I'd long believed healed. The enormity of what Emily had done overwhelmed me, leaving me dizzy, furious, and heartbroken all at once. The pain of betrayal surged within me again, deeper and more potent than I'd imagined possible, eclipsing even the agony of our divorce. Emily hadn't just taken my happiness, my dignity. She had stolen my son, a child whose existence I had never known. Rage boiled within me, hotter and more violent than ever before. How could she? I whispered bitterly, fists clenched tightly beneath the table. How could she do something like this? Sophie's eyes were dark with sorrow, reflecting my pain. Emily always chose herself first, Mark. She believed she was making the right choice. She convinced herself, and me, that it was best for everyone involved. But I watched it haunt her. Beneath all the glamour, all the success, she never stopped thinking about him. She buried that guilt beneath layers of false happiness, pretending everything was perfect, but deep down, she was tormented by what she did. Where is he now? I demanded, desperate for answers, desperate for something. Anything to hold on to in this storm of confusion and anger. I don't know exactly, Sophie admitted, regret evident in her voice. But I found out he was adopted by a family not far from here. I could help you find him if that's what you want. Her words opened a new path in front of me, terrifying yet irresistible. A child, a son, someone whose blood was mine, someone Emily had abandoned without remorse. My mind raced wildly, torn between fury at Emily's selfishness and the sudden, overwhelming yearning to see the face of my own child, to know him, protect him, and claim him as mine. Suddenly, revenge wasn't just about hurting Emily anymore. It was about reclaiming everything she had stolen from me. She had taken away my family, my love, my sense of self, and now, worst of all, she had robbed me of fatherhood, something precious and irreplaceable. As Sophie watched me carefully, clearly sensing my inner turmoil, I finally spoke, my voice steady despite the storm raging within. Help me find him. I need to see my son. I deserve to know him, even if Emily thought otherwise. Sophie nodded gently, her expression understanding yet cautious. I'll do what I can, Mark. But be careful. This truth could change everything. Not just for Emily, but for you too. I don't care about the risks, I replied firmly, feeling the determination grow stronger within me. Emily chose her path, and now I choose mine. She thought she could erase me, erase us, erase our son, but she was wrong. She'll finally understand the true meaning of loss. I promise you, Sophie, she'll pay for what she's done. As Sophie stood to leave, she placed a comforting hand briefly on mine, offering silent support. Alone again, I sat in stunned silence, grappling with the enormity of what I'd just learned. My heart burned with renewed anger. Yes, but beneath it was something far stronger, something deeper, hope. For the first time in years, my existence had meaning beyond vengeance. Now, I had someone worth fighting for, someone whose life I could protect and cherish. Emily had sought complete freedom, discarding me, discarding her own child. But in her blind pursuit of independence, she had unwittingly given me the key to true victory. And I would stop at nothing until I had taken back everything she'd stolen from me, starting with my son. In the weeks following Sophie's revelation, my world shifted completely. Revenge, which had driven me for so long, was suddenly overshadowed by an overwhelming desire to find my son. Thoughts of vengeance still lingered, bitter and relentless, but now there was something stronger guiding me, something pure, genuine, and unexpectedly hopeful. My days were consumed with careful research, chasing vague leads and piecing together clues. Sophie remained at my side, quietly assisting me through the tangled maze of adoption records, hoping to make amends for her part in Emily's deception. Together we slowly narrowed the search until one cool autumn morning, I finally stood at the doorstep of the family who had raised my child, my heart racing, nerves taut as steel wires. When the door opened, I was greeted by a gentle-faced woman whose eyes conveyed warmth and kindness. Her name was Margaret Wilson, and her cautious smile softened when I introduced myself. It seemed as though she had been anticipating my arrival, prepared for the day when the truth would surface. Margaret invited me inside, her demeanor calm, her voice soothing as she shared the story I so desperately needed to hear. Sitting in her cozy living room, surrounded by framed photos of a life I had unknowingly missed, I felt an ache so powerful it threatened to overwhelm me. "Your son's name is Daniel," she said softly, placing a small, worn photo album into my trembling hands. "He's always known he was adopted, and we've never hidden that from him. But the details, the truth about his parents, that was something we simply never had." Slowly turning the pages, I glimpsed snapshots of Daniel's life. His first steps, his joyful childhood birthdays, and the smiling teenager he had become. Each photo was a knife twisting deeper into my soul, highlighting the countless moments I had missed. My heart swelled with a strange combination of sorrow and gratitude, pain for the years lost, yet profound appreciation for the love this family had given him. As Margaret continued speaking, I listened intently, hungry for every detail, every scrap of information about my son. Eventually, she paused, looking at me with a gentle but troubled expression. "There's something else you should know, Mark. Daniel has already met his biological mother. Emily reached out to him a few months ago. She's been seeing him secretly, building a relationship without our knowledge. He seemed happy at first, but lately, something's changed." My blood turned ice cold at her words. Anger flared anew at Emily's audacity, once again inserting herself into his life after abandoning him, reclaiming what she'd thrown away only when it suited her needs. But alongside anger arose another emotion, one far more unsettling: fear. What had Emily told Daniel? What lies had she woven to justify her choices? And would he even accept me, now that she had entered his life first? Determined, I asked Margaret to help arrange a meeting. I needed to see Daniel face to face, to speak with him myself before Emily twisted our shared history beyond recognition. Margaret, sensing my urgency, agreed, her eyes revealing a deep sympathy and understanding of my situation. She promised to set it up, leaving me restless but hopeful as I stepped back into the cool autumn air. Days later, we met at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory that Daniel had chosen himself. When I arrived, my breath caught at the sight of him, now a tall, confident young man who closely resembled me at his age. His cautious eyes studied me from across the table, wary yet curious. After a tense silence, Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "I wasn't sure I ever wanted to meet you. Emily said things about you. She said you never wanted me. She said leaving me was your choice." Hearing Emily's lies shattered something deep inside me, fueling an intensity I'd never known. I spoke carefully, choosing each word deliberately, desperate to undo the damage she had done. "That's not true, Daniel. I never knew about you. Emily kept your existence from me because she wanted freedom. She left us both behind, pursuing her own ambitions at any cost." He studied my face intently, searching for sincerity, searching for a truth he desperately needed. Slowly, the suspicion faded from his eyes, replaced by relief and perhaps a hint of forgiveness. The bond that formed between us in those moments felt fragile yet precious, a connection neither Emily nor time could ever fully erase. As we prepared to part ways, Daniel suddenly turned, his expression hesitant but determined. "There's something else, Dad, something Emily doesn't know I've discovered. She didn't seek me out because she regretted her choice. She found me because she needs something from me, something only I can give her." My heartbeat quickened at his words, sensing the gravity behind them. "What is it, Daniel?" He paused, looking directly into my eyes. "She's sick, Dad. Emily's dying. She needs my help, a donor. She came back only because I'm her last hope." In that instant, my plans for vengeance shattered completely, replaced by a devastating truth more powerful than any punishment I'd envisioned. Emily had returned not out of love or regret, but selfish desperation. And now, I finally understood exactly what she'd left behind, and exactly what I had truly gained. I stood in the doorway, staring deeply into Emily's frightened eyes, feeling an unsettling mix of triumph and regret. For so long, I had envisioned this very moment, played out in countless scenarios, each time imagining the satisfaction I'd experience when she finally understood the gravity of her decisions. Yet, now, as I faced her fear directly, victory felt strangely hollow. Emily's desperation was real, her terror palpable. But beneath my anger, a reluctant sliver of empathy stirred, an emotion I had not anticipated nor welcomed. "I can't help you, Emily," I said, my voice calm yet firm, betraying none of my inner turmoil. "Daniel deserves better than this. He deserves someone who genuinely loves him, not someone who abandoned him when convenience suited her and returned only to use him again. You made your choice years ago. Now you must face the consequences." Emily's shoulders trembled slightly, tears streaming openly down her face, unchecked, her pride collapsing before my eyes. She was reduced to pleading, stripped of her dignity, Every mask she'd worn over the years shattered in the brutal honesty of our exchange. Yet despite her raw vulnerability, I remained unmoved, recalling every betrayal, every selfish decision that had brought us here. Mark, she whispered weakly, her voice barely audible, yet laced with genuine pain. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I lost that right long ago. But please, Daniel shouldn't suffer because of my mistakes. Help me at least explain to him that I never meant to hurt him. He deserves the truth. The truth. I echoed coldly, a wave of bitterness surging through me. Which truth, Emily? The one you've conveniently constructed to justify abandoning him? Or the real truth, the one where you discarded him without a second thought because he didn't fit into your vision of a perfect life? You speak of suffering, but you're the one who created it. She lowered her head, eyes heavy with defeat. For a long moment, silence hung thick between us, filled only by the distant sounds of traffic below her luxurious apartment, a bitter reminder of how far apart our worlds had drifted. Finally, Emily lifted her head, meeting my gaze with a surprising strength born from desperation. Mark, please understand. I'm not proud of what I've done. Every day since, I've regretted leaving Daniel, leaving you. At first, freedom seemed like everything I'd ever wanted. But I was wrong. Everything I chased turned to ashes in my hands. Fame, wealth, freedom, none of it brought me happiness. It only left me empty and alone. Daniel is my son, our son, and despite everything, I truly love him. I'm begging you, give me one chance to make things right. Her words hung heavily in the air between us, sincere enough to momentarily weaken my resolve. I stood silently, a fierce battle raging within me. Part of me longed to believe her, to trust that somewhere beneath her selfishness lay genuine remorse. Yet another, stronger part, still wounded and wary, screamed warnings that Emily's words were nothing more than carefully calculated manipulations, a final desperate attempt at escape. You had countless chances, Emily. I finally responded, my voice softer now, yet firm with resolve. Each time you had a choice, you chose yourself. You abandoned us both, discarded everything meaningful. Your tears won't erase that now, and Daniel deserves better than empty apologies or calculated regret. He deserves genuine love, something you're incapable of giving. For a long moment, silence filled the space between us, heavy with sorrow, anger, and finality. Emily slowly nodded, understanding at last the irreversible nature of her mistakes. Her tears ceased, replaced by an expression of resigned acceptance. As I turned away, leaving her standing alone, fragile, defeated, I felt no satisfaction, only a lingering sadness for the woman I had once loved and the family she had destroyed. Emily had sought absolute freedom at all costs. Yet in the end, her pursuit had become her prison, isolating, painful, and inescapable. Stepping back into the cool evening air, I took a deep breath, attempting to calm the emotions still raging inside. Revenge had brought me here, yet victory offered no true peace. Instead, it brought clarity. Emily was no longer my battle. My purpose lay elsewhere, with Daniel, the son whose existence I'd been denied for too long. He was the future, a chance at redemption and healing that Emily could never touch again. As I walked away from Emily's glamorous apartment building, beneath a sky darkened by clouds heavy with the promise of rain, I realized something profound. Vengeance could destroy, but it could never heal. True victory lay in something deeper, in forgiveness, in acceptance, in moving forward with grace. Emily had lost everything in her blind pursuit of freedom, leaving behind a son who now stood at the crossroads between bitterness and hope. It was my role to guide him, to teach him that pain needn't define him. Perhaps in saving Daniel from Emily's legacy, I would finally save myself as well, reclaiming the life she'd taken from me, piece by piece, restoring what had been lost. Emily had made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine, and this time, I would choose wisely. Time passed swiftly after that night, each day filled with moments that gradually softened the edges of bitterness I'd carried for so long. Daniel and I spent more and more time together, cautiously learning to become father and son, forging a bond neither of us had ever imagined possible. In him, I found not just reflections of myself, but echoes of the dreams and hopes I'd long thought dead. Through his eyes, I began to see the world differently, not through the prism of revenge or regret, but through a lens of possibility and renewal. Daniel taught me resilience, compassion, and the courage to rebuild even after the deepest betrayal. Yet, even as our bond strengthened, Emily's presence lingered like a shadow, a silent specter reminding us both of what we'd lost and what we'd survived. News eventually reached us of her failing health, each update bleaker than the last. I felt no triumph at her suffering, only a quiet sadness at the inevitable consequences of her choices. The freedom she pursued had granted her wealth and fame, but ultimately robbed her of genuine love, the one thing she truly needed but could never regain. Then one rainy afternoon, the call finally came. Emily was in the hospital, her condition critical, the doctors doubtful she would last through the night. Daniel, quiet and conflicted, looked to me for guidance, uncertainty clear in his youthful face. "Should we see her?" he asked softly, his eyes searching mine for answers. "She might not deserve forgiveness, but maybe she deserves closure." I hesitated only briefly, considering the weight of our decision. Finally, I nodded gently, recognizing the profound courage within Daniel's simple act of compassion. "You're right. Closure is something we all need, even Emily. She needs to understand clearly what she left behind." We arrived at the hospital, stepping quietly into the sterile, hushed room where Emily lay, pale and frail. Her once vibrant beauty faded into a ghostly shadow. Her breathing was labored, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. Yet at our arrival, they flickered open, widening in disbelief and sudden vulnerability as she saw us standing there together. Daniel approached slowly, taking her frail hand in his own, his strength providing contrast to her fragility. "I'm here, Mom," he whispered, his voice steady but gentle, filled with maturity beyond his years. "We're both here." Emily's gaze shifted slowly toward me, uncertainty and pain clouding her eyes. In that moment, she appeared stripped bare of all the illusions she'd so carefully built, finally exposed as nothing more than human, weak, frightened, and desperately alone. "Mark," she whispered hoarsely, her voice barely audible, carrying a lifetime of regret. "I'm so sorry. For everything." In the quiet of that hospital room, years of resentment and bitterness washed away, leaving only raw honesty. Emily's apology held sincerity I had never before sensed from her. Perhaps her illness had stripped away all pretenses, or perhaps, nearing the end, she truly understood the full weight of her choices. Either way, it was enough to grant forgiveness, even if not forgetting. "I forgive you, Emily," I said softly, feeling a deep peace settle inside my chest, an unfamiliar yet comforting sensation. "You chased freedom at all costs, and you got exactly what you wanted. But now you finally see, it was never freedom you needed. It was family, loyalty, and love. You had it all once, and you chose to let it go." She nodded weakly, tears sliding silently down her hollow cheeks, a painful acknowledgement of the truth she'd always known but stubbornly refused to face. Emily's eyes shifted again toward Daniel, and for the briefest moment, I saw genuine, unconditional love reflected there, a love she'd abandoned but now deeply regretted losing forever. "Take care of each other," she whispered, her voice fading into fragile silence. Her eyes drifted closed, exhaustion overcoming her fragile form. Daniel squeezed her hand gently, offering comfort even now, in her final hours. As we left the hospital together, stepping out into the rain-soaked evening, I wrapped my arm protectively around Daniel's shoulders, pulling him close. We walked silently through the quiet streets, each of us absorbed in our own reflections. The past lay behind us, filled with pain, loss, and betrayal, yet ahead stretched a future ripe with possibility, healing, and new beginnings. That night, standing once more upon the old bridge where this entire journey had begun, I looked down at the river below, now calm and gentle under the starlit sky. The storm that had raged within me for so long was finally quiet, replaced by an unfamiliar peace. Emily's pursuit of freedom had destroyed her, but it had also led me here, to Daniel, to redemption, to a chance at genuine happiness. Daniel stood beside me quietly, looking down into the same waters, thoughtful and serene. "Thank you for finding me, Dad," he said softly, breaking the silence, his voice filled with gratitude and hope. For giving me something to believe in. I smiled warmly, feeling my heart swell with an emotion I'd long forgotten, joy. No, Daniel. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. As we turned to leave, stepping forward into our future together, I realized at last the truth Emily had learned too late. Freedom without love was meaningless, and vengeance offered no comfort. True victory lay in forgiveness, family, and the courage to embrace life, even after devastation. Emily had sought complete freedom, but in the end, it was I who found it, here, in the love and loyalty she had left behind.